So what you're saying is that there's a distinction between going into space and actually looking at the world and seeing with your own two eyes that it's round.
Yeah.
Whereas the evidence for evolution is a bit more indirect than that.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, when a detective comes on the scene of a crime, and obviously the detective hasn't seen the murder, because if he had, he'd know. But nevertheless, the detective takes fingerprints and blood samples and looks at footprints and builds up a very, very strong case. And sometimes the case can be so strong, every bit of evidence points in that direction. Can't that sometimes be as good as, or maybe even better than eyewitness evidence? Because, you know, eyewitness evidence can actually be wrong. People are mistaken. People think they recognize somebody's face when they don't. And there's quite a lot of good evidence that eyewitness evidence in courts of law is actually less reliable than, for individual identification than DNA evidence, for example. Because DNA evidence is the equivalent of the evidence that evolution is true. Perhaps you haven't got a full impression of how strong the evidence actually is. It's as though you had 1 million, 10 million different pieces of evidence, all pointing in the same direction, every single one of them pointing in the same direction. Nobody's actually seen evolution take place over a long period, but they've seen the after effects, and the after effects are massively supported by evidence, not just one bit of evidence, but hundreds, millions of bits of evidence, all pointing in the same direction. It's like a case in a court of law where nobody can actually stand up and say, I saw the murder happen. But yet, you've got millions and millions of pieces of evidence which no reasonable person could possibly dispute. That's sort of the way it is. And so, you shouldn't really take too seriously this thing about only a theory. Because in that philosophical sense, everything is only a theory. Let's go on to another one.